Welcome to Brain Strength, the series where this average Joe teaches you a thing or two about sports psych while doing occasional athletic things, sometimes not. I'm your host, RJ Lynch, and with my master's in sports psychology, let's get this thing rolling. On this episode, Brain Strength, we're going to be focusing on the idea of leadership, how to be a better leader for your team, how to be that team captain that you've always wanted to be, and how there's different leadership styles that you can influence and that you really don't have to fit a single mold to be an effective leader. So what is leadership by its basic definition? Leadership is the ability to guide, to influence, and inspire others towards a common goal and to do so in their best way. Now, leadership can be negative, it can be positive. A positive goal, so winning a championship, versus there's negative leaders as well that can overthrow coaches. They can turn a locker room against a coach or an organization. That happens as well, and that'd be negative generally. Most of the time, it's not great when you turn against others, so call it negative. At the baseline, there's two different forms of leadership. There's our verbal leaders, those who use their words, their ideas to influence, to inspire. They give those speeches. They tell people to shut up when they're talking during coach's instructions. They're the ones that keep order with their words. And then you have your nonverbals. You have people who just use actions, or they use that presence that they have to influence, to inspire, to lead. They show people what it means to be a hard worker. They show what it's like to just lock in, to be that person. And sometimes these leaders just have this aura about them that you're like, I want to follow this person. And that would be nonverbal as well. Both styles work, both can be effective. Sometimes verbal leaders need to use a little nonverbal leadership. Just saying to work hard doesn't always work as well as also working hard. And sometimes the nonverbals have to step up and say things as well. Because it's good and all when you're just doing your thing, but if a team's dysfunctional, sometimes you have to tell people to stop being idiots. Now, there's many different styles of leadership. There's different things that can be done, and everybody generally leans towards one style or another, both as a follower and as a leader themselves. So sometimes you have to fluctuate between them, expand your horizons to fit the situation and the people that you're leading. The first, we have autocratic. These are the ones that just make decisions. They do all the decision making. They decide, we're going to do this, tell the people what they're going to do, and then things get done. It's very quick. It's very effective to the point that everybody knows their role. Things are very clarified. There's not a lot of room for argument. Things are just said and done. Most people, when they hear autocratic, they think of dictators, kings, things like that. But that puts a very negative connotation that, oh, dictators, big, scary, which through history they generally have been. But when you're working with a team, when you're working with sports, business as well, sometimes you have to make quick decisions and you're not able to consult everyone. As a coach, you don't get to talk to every player on the offense, be like, all right, what play do we want to run today? We only have 40 seconds to make this call, but everybody quick put a vote in what you want to do. If you do that, you're going to get a delay of game call every time in football. So sometimes you just have to make the call. Then there's democratic. This is where everybody gets to be a part of the decision in some way, or at least most people get a decision. They're generally represented by someone in some way. There's usually a vote, there's discussion that goes on. This might be during practice. The coach has a few drills at the end that they want to do, but only has time for one, so they have everybody vote on it. Then the winner of that gets to be the drill that's done. That's a very democratic way of leading. For the athletes on the team, if you're a democratic leader, if you're taking things from a leadership standpoint of being democratic, you might consult with your other teammates about certain things that need to be done, such as what color is the uniform will be this year? What do we want to do for some goals? Things like that. Transformational leaders. These are those people that really just set that main goal or that vision, that dream that they want to accomplish, and others do what they have to do. to help that get there. They see this vision, this dream, and they're like, yeah, I want to accomplish that too. That looks so beautiful. I'm going to help do whatever I need to do to work towards that goal. So it might be a player that's going to be retiring this year, and they've done everything, they've held all these records, but the one thing they haven't done is win that championship. So they set this goal of going out on top, of finally accomplishing this thing that's eluded them for most of their career. And because there's so much respect already for this person, people like this person, they kind of uniform around this idea of like, we need to win this championship. We have to do it. So they set their mini goals to help us get there. Situational is really just this idea that we shift depending on the situation. So being in the middle of a game down by 3 with a minute left on the clock is a different context and might need a different leader than in practice at the start where we're trying to decide what we want to do for this or that. Different situation calls for different things. Or it can be situational depending on who your teammates are. Most people generally lean one way or another to being a leader, being a follower to some degree. All of us are capable of being both, but if you talk to enough people, if you reflect on yourself, do you like being the one that makes the decision? Or do you like to be the person that just follows along with the decision? And if you have a team full of people that just like to follow, you might have to take on more of an autocratic role because they're not going to sit there. The Democratic stuff's going to bog down because everybody's going to be kind of like, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I don't know. Maybe. And then you throw out an idea and they're like, I don't know about that one. It's like, So sometimes you just have to be autocratic and say, nope, we're doing this today. So that could be the situation as well. Then there's the servant leadership style, which might sound very contradictory to one another, but it really means that your focus as a leader is to empower and help others. So your goal is to lift those around you up and help them chase their dreams, help them chase their goals. A good example of this might be you have a point guard whose main focus is getting everybody in the right style. They don't care about how many points they score or rebounds. They care about how many assists they have and whether or not the team wins the game at the end. So they lead by just passing the ball, making the right decisions, focusing on helping elevate their teammates instead of their stat line. Then you have laissez-faire. This is really where you just kind of put your hands up, like, do whatever you need. Yep, accomplish your stuff. Usually you don't see this a lot in sport, mostly because high-level athletes and coaches are very type A with a lot of things, or at least partially controlling in type A. So the idea of being completely hands-off is rare. So don't worry about this one as much. Next up in the leadership, you have to understand where leadership power comes from. And there's a lot of different ways. There's legitimate leadership. So this comes from you're the coach. You were the elected captain. You are in a role that is designed to lead people. So you have power. You can make decisions because of it. If you're not a coach and you're trying to tell people what we're doing for practice and you're the freshman that's on the team the first day, people are going to look at you like, shut up. Shut up. And they're not going to follow. Then there's coercive. So these are the leaders that use threat to lead. So the kid whose daddy puts way too much money into the organization, so now they get to make calls because if they don't, those funds get pulled and you don't get to go on your trip to Cancun this year as a team. That would be very coercive. Referent. So this is the power of the leadership that comes from those who mentor and inspire. So maybe you have a junior on the team. They're very good with working with the freshmen. They all love him because he just inspires them, talks to them, shows them the ropes, explains to them how things go. And even though they're not formally a captain, people just like to be around them because she mentors, whoever it is, they inspire them. That would be a power that they get, that now they can make decisions because people just like them. Charismatic is very similar on the idea that people like them, but in a different way. Whereas mentors use advice, they use inspiration to get that referent power. Charisma is more about, can you talk good? Can you say the right things that people are going to like you? Now that you get power because people just like you. Politicians are great at this. Very rarely have I ever seen politicians that are good at anything else except they talk good. Then there's expertise. So if you're an expert at something, and say you were young in your career, but you're very good at certain lifts or so in the weight room, you're very strong, because you're an expert in that, or at least better than the other people on your team, even though you're young, you might take a leadership role there because people look and watch like, okay, they do that very well. Okay, tell me, how do I get to be big like you? I want to be like you. I want to walk like you, talk like you. How do I get to be strong like you? And you start explaining, and they're like, okay, yeah. Then there's informational. So this is a power that comes from a difference in information. So coaches already have that legitimate power. They also generally have informational power because they've been around the block for many years and know things that the athletes don't. There's this different information that they're imparting upon you, wisdom, technique, things that help you be a better athlete. That just allows you then to have power because you have something that ideally your athletes or other people on your team want. Then there's power that comes through reward, usually seen less by the athletes, once again more by coaches or organizations. You give bonuses for certain things, so people follow you because they want to get these bonuses from you, these extras, these rewards. There's moral power, usually not as important in sports as well, but it's more or less this idea that this person is good-hearted, this person is pure, so you want to follow them because you want to be good and pure, at least in the West here, that's generally the idea, is like you need to be good. And then lastly is connection. So you have power, you have leadership and influence because you're connected to other people. Because your big brother or sister plays professionally, you have connection to them who then they come and talk to the team. So people automatically connect with you more, want to follow you because they want to be close to this brother, big sister you might have that they might idolize. So this just gives you a little bit of power because you have something that others want that way. So those who lead, what makes someone effective versus ineffective? To be effective, you communicate clearly and listen actively. So you speak words that are easy for people to understand, not filled with scientific jargon. And then when it's your turn to listen, you listen to understand instead of just listen to respond or hear. The ineffective person will do the opposite. They'll often just sit there listening to things, and then they're waiting for an opportunity to respond instead of listening to understand what your point is. They're poor at communicating things. So maybe they use a lot of scientific jargon, or they use too simple, bad language, things that you just sit there like, what are you saying? Speak words. The effective leader is very accountable. When they make mistakes, they're going to say, I screwed up. I did this wrong. Even sometimes when they have teammates make mistakes, they'll take the blame and say, it's on me. I need to improve. And if they're a really effective leader, their teammate who did make a mistake is going to come up like, nah, dog, this was on me. I appreciate you, but this is my fault today. Whereas ineffective leaders blaming others, they're saying, you sent me a bad pass. You were in the wrong spot. Why didn't you catch that? That was a perfect throw. How did you miss that block? I had a perfect set and you just whiffed that. Whatever it is, they're blaming others for their mistakes. Why did coach make a bad call? The effective leader is someone that's driven and inspired, and then they know how to drive and inspire others. They know how to say the right things, show the right things, so that they can help others do good. Those who are poor leaders, they demotivate others. They yell, they scream, they give cold shoulders, they gaslight, they gatekeep, they do things that make others feel like crap. Effective leaders make sound judgments. The ineffective one makes hesitant or rushed judgments. And lastly, and this one can depend on how people view leadership, but I say really an effective leader does things driven from a goodness to help others, to make things better, whereas an ineffective leader is driven by selfishness. So even if you're doing things that might not look good, if you're doing it to help others, to make things overall better, I think it's good. So going back to positive, negative leadership, you're trying to inspire people to get coach fired. What is the reason behind that? It's negative, don't get me wrong, because you're getting someone fired. You're subtracting something from the equation. Is your desire to have that coach fired because they're abusive, they yell at the team, they're costing us wins, they're causing people to quit, so you're trying to get them fired to remedy all that? Or are you trying to get them fired because you and them don't get along? Just you and the coach. You hit butts. So if you're doing it for the others, for that, to inspire them that they can survive without, I'd say you're driven by good. You're effective. If you're doing it just for you, then you're not effective. You're not doing things well. Now for the quick science bits. First up, understanding as a leader that there's this idea of social identity, that everybody has these identities that we shape, that we have, like I'm a son, a coach, a friend, whatever it might be. These are different identities that we hold. And everybody on the team is going to be more effective if they have these different parts, but they also identify like, I'm a volleyball player for X team. If you identify with that, you'll be more likely to work hard because it is part of who you are. And as a leader, if you're good at what you do, it's a lot easier to help people identify with the sport because then they're going to enjoy being there. They're going to be inspired to be there. Whereas if you're a shisty leader, they'll be like, yeah, I do this thing, but it isn't what I am. So they just aren't going to care as much. Then there's the leadership effectiveness model. So there's a balance between style, preference, and situation. So going back to this idea of autocratic versus laissez-faire. Depending on the situation you're in, the people around you, and your own style, the effectiveness of how you lead is going to come down to how all of them intermingle. So if you're in a situation where you need an autocratic leader, but your team prefers democratic leadership, and you are more of a transformational leader, there's going to be conflict there because there's these three misaligned things. Now, if you're in a situation that needs autocratic, a team that likes to follow and likes an autocratic leader, and you're democratic transformational, it's a lot easier for you to be like, oh, guess I gotta switch. I gotta be autocratic right now. Than it is when there's a lot of conflict between what is wanted, what's needed, and who you are. And then finally, emotional contagion theory. So if you are this leader, whether it's legitimate, whether it's referent, whether it's this, that, this, if you hold this spot of power, if people are inspired, influenced by you, your emotions are going to partially dictate how others respond. Think about teams you've been on, organizations you've had, when you've had a leader that is very angry versus one that's very calm. Because of the environment and the influence they have, their anger, their calm radiates through others. Not everybody exactly aligns, but the more connected you are to a leader and the more you are a leader that influences others, the more your emotions are going to affect others. So what would I do as a mental performance pro? I would help find model leaders or model leadership styles, help them discover what they want to do there, do simulations on communication rehearsal. So I may act out as someone on the team and have them rehearse how they want to do things. If I'm working with a group, I might create situations that aren't sports related where you need someone to lead and kind of devise how you want leadership to go. So you see this a lot of different activities. Responsibility assignments. So if I'm working with someone who's trying to build their ability to lead, we might create different assignments or things that they can do that enhance leadership. This might be talking with all the underclassmen at least once a week. Doing things that are considered below them as demonstrations for the team. So if I'm working with someone that's a captain on the team, or if I'm working with a bunch of the seniors, and right now the freshmen are slacking off on this or that. I'll have the seniors model what it's like to do the things correctly and show them that this isn't above anyone. Next up is end of the year speech. So if I'm working with an individual, I'll have them write out an outline of a speech that maybe their teammates would give about them. So I'll ask, like, what do you want your teammates to say about you at the end of the year banquet? And have them list off the 3 to 5 things that are important to them. And then we dive into those 3 or 5 things and talk about, like, okay, how do you do those better so that your teammates say that about you? And then leadership journals. It's always nice to have people reflect on how they did, how the team responded to certain actions they took, words they said, so that they can reflect on how to be better next time. Coaches, how do you do it? First up would be mentorship programs. So pairing freshmen with juniors, freshmen with seniors, whatever you might do, and have them be paired off so that the freshman can learn from the senior not only the skill, but how to act like the senior captain, how be this. Bringing in other sources or other people that you see as good leaders to mentor, to help your assigned leaders. Can do captain for a day. So maybe there's certain drills, or at the end of practice, every day you have one person new lead a drill, lead things, just so they get to model what it's like to talk in front of the group and show things off. That goes along with that leadership rotation. From there, I also like to do culture meetings. This is something that you can do alone, or if you need help from Mental Performance Pro, can work very well. But at the start of the year, have the people that you see as your captains, see as your team leaders, come meet with you and decide what's the culture, what's the attitude of this team, how do we develop it, make everybody better, things like that. And then player-led scouting. This can go along with the leadership rotations captains for a day. If you have one person, you designate X player to focus in on something for the tape. So now they have to break down in front of the group what they notice, what they see, how things are going to go, what the team needs to do, and how to respond. So just putting a little bit more ownership on the players to be that person, instead of you telling them every week that they need to do X, Y, Z, having that player say, we need to do X, Y, or Z, or this team does X, Y, Z. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions or want to speak to me more about how to be a better leader, reach out, set up a consultation, and know that if there's anything today that I said that you found offensive, I hope you can forgive me. If you say anything in the comment section that I find a bit offensive, no, I'll probably forgive you. So until next time, brain strength.